Out. All right, here we go. Oh, got some more people coming. All right. So we're letting everybody in. Not a big crowd. I got a lot of names on screens. If you would be as so kind as to show yourself, if you can. I don't want you to feel, like we're putting you on the spot. But this is Andy Nairn, who is coming to us from London, England. And he is the man behind Lucky Generals Agency, who Amy Charlotte Keene is someone I recommend to my students to follow on Twitter. And on the 29th of this month, she was raving about Little Moon's ice cream and an ad that the Lucky Generals did. And she just raved about how awesome it was. And so if you go to Lucky Generals website, you could see their clients as well as some of the work they've done. Now, the way I met Andy was from finding his book or hearing him interviewed on the Marketing Book Podcast with my friend Doug Burdett. His book, Go Luck Yourself, 40 Ways to Stack the Odds in Your Brand's Favor, which goes into case studies and anecdotes and snippets of campaigns, different ways, 40 different ways, 40 suggestions that you could get luckier as a marketer. So without further ado, let's turn it over to Andy. Thank you for showing yourself so it's not just me and Andy. Thank you. All right, take it away, Andy.
Amazing. This whole thing is very odd, isn't it? Because so it's now 8 o'clock over here in the UK. It's nice and dark, and I'm in this. I guess we've all spent time in these funny little rooms in our houses or in our apartments. And I'm going to just walk around the room and pick things up. I'm afraid you're going to have to put up with a funny accent. It's not even a funny English accent. It's a funny Scottish accent. So hopefully that will translate somewhere along the lines. But yeah, massive thanks for you coming, because the book I've written, all the royalties are going to a good cause. They're going to an organisation that helps working class, so disadvantaged kids, get into the creative industries. So just by sitting here, you're doing something good and making good things happen in the world. So, and I thought what I'd do is, if it's all right with you, I thought I'd tell you what the book is about for starters, and then maybe a little bit about why I wrote it, and more importantly, why or how you might use it in your future careers or in your studies and so on. So I will dive in. It's a nice little intimate gathering, this, so we'll have to get you to do some things to help me along the way. I thought, right, so to start with, what's the book about? It's about the role of luck in building a brand. So it's not about individual luck. It's not about making you luckier in your love life, I'm afraid. It won't help your sports team get lucky. It's not going to help you win the lottery or anything like that. So afraid if you thought you were coming here for that talk, sadly, I'm afraid I've got nothing to help you with on that point. But yeah, it's about organizations and how companies and organizations can make themselves luckier. And I wrote it because, so I've got this ad agency called Lucky Generals. It's quite a big agency in the UK, and in the States we do things like Amazon's Super Bowl ads and things like that. So it's quite nice to do a book about luck, given the name of the agency is Lucky Generals. But in a weird way, I sort of wrote it despite having a company with the word luck in it, because rather embarrassingly, I sort of got to last year and I kind of figured, this is a bit embarrassing. I've got a company called Lucky Generals, but I don't really know anything about luck. I've never really thought about it. We just liked the name, and when we set the company up, and we didn't really think much about it. And then over the last year or so, I've found myself thinking a lot about luck, and maybe you're the same. Like, I've found myself thinking a lot about bad luck, because we're all sitting at home in this horrible pandemic. None of us asked for it. Horrible things going on in the world. So I've found myself, down in the dumps, thinking a lot about how unlucky I was. But then also thinking a lot about good luck as well, because a lot of the other big stories of the last year, whether it's Black Lives Matter or Me Too, make me think, I'm the classic older, white, straight bloke dude, and makes me think how lucky I am and how privileged I am, and so all these big stories in the world sort of seem to touch on luck, either good luck or bad luck in some sort of way. And I kind of thought, God, this is really embarrassing. I don't even know what luck is. So I thought I would do some research. And the good thing was that I found that nobody knows about luck. None of us really talk about luck in the West anyway. So I bet none of you sort of applied to your course at WCU by saying, yeah, I'm just really lucky. You know, you don't begin your essays by saying this is just hopefully going to luckily hit the spot. So we don't, it's a bit of a taboo. We don't like to talk about luck. In fact, worse than that, it's a bit of an insult, isn't it? So if I were to call you lucky, you'd probably think I was being really rude, because it implies you haven't worked hard or you're not talented and so on. So I sort of like the idea of, luck it's literally a 4-letter word, and so that it appealed to me that this book might be quite a funny idea to have a book called Go Luck Yourself. And unfortunately, they're not funny to my mum. So my mum is in her 80s, and she was pleased about her son writing this book, after years of just doing these stupid ads. Now he'd finally written a book, and she wanted to tell all her old friends. So she kept asking me, what's the book called? And I was pathetic. Usually I spend my life telling my clients to be brave and courageous and, speak their mind. But when it came to my own product, I was a pathetic coward. And I couldn't tell my mom what. Also, she's quite deaf, and I thought I might shout down the phone, "Go luck yourself, mom," and it might all be horrendous family problems. So I basically told her that it was the publishers. They would get to choose the name, and I would have nothing to do with that. So now my mom hates the publishers, by the way. So that's an unfortunate sort of byproduct. But anyway, that's a diversion. The point is, I found out more about luck, and I got research, and I thought it was really interesting because there's 2 reasons we don't talk about luck. One, it's a very much a Western thing. So it's like there's a cultural thing going on here. And any of you who have worked in other parts of the world or studied or perhaps have family connections with other cultures will know that certain parts of the world, they're much more likely to talk about luck, and it's very acceptable, especially in Asia. It's a perfectly natural topic of conversation. Whereas in the West, we're a bit snooty about it. We look down our noses. We think it's a bit primitive. And the reason for that is a historical thing. So we used to talk about luck as well in the West until Victorian times. But when the Victorians came along, they believed in the Protestant work ethic and the Industrial Revolution. And they believed the answer to everything was just working harder and harder. So if you were rich and successful, that meant that you had worked really hard and God had smiled upon your endeavor. And if you're poor, you just haven't tried hard enough and you should work a bit harder. And that mentality. I know it's a bit of a history lesson there, but it's very much true to life today, to a lot of Western business. It's basically the answer to everything. And you're going to get lots of people in your careers telling you just work harder and harder and harder. And obviously hard work is important, and you are going to need to do that. But just remember that a lot of the time, it's not about just putting those extra hours in. It's about doing something in a different way and thinking creatively around a problem, and yeah, being lucky. And, luck, you've probably had some luck already in your lives. And I think the more that you're mindful of it, then you can change the luck in your life. If you just say that there's no such thing as luck, then it's quite hard for you to do anything about it, really. But the book is about changing your luck, sort of taking the cards that you've been dealt. You can't really do anything about them, but then figuring out how can you play the best game possible. And in the book, there's 40 different chapters. Don't worry, I'm not going to go through each one of them now in excruciating sort of detail. That would be very unlucky for you. But I thought I'd maybe talk about 4 themes. And if you've got a pen and paper, it might help to write them down. So the first theme in the book is about appreciate what you've got. So number 1, appreciate what you've got. And then the second one is look out for opportunities everywhere. And then the third one is turn misfortune into good fortune. And then the last one is practice being lucky. So this first one's interesting. Like I think it's good for us all to appreciate what we've got. And the analogy I would use here is there's a TV show in the UK, but I think it runs in the States too, called Antiques Roadshow. Does that ring any bell? It's kind of like it's a sort of thing that old people watch. So I watch it now. So not even in a sarcastic sort of way. I actually do watch it. And what I like about it is that you've got funny stories in it where people are using objects that turn out to be priceless, but they just don't realize how incredibly valuable are. So there was a little old lady on the UK version last week who had a little vase like this, a little sort of glass bowl that she was using to keep snacks in. And it turned out to be worth £30,000. So it was like a crazy thing for her to be doing with this really valuable vase. And there's lots of examples of this. So if I go to my messy cupboard over here, there was somebody recently in the UK who was looking through the garage, and was throwing out old toys from their kids. And they had some Star Wars memorabilia like this, just gathering dust. And this, sadly not this, because this cost me £5 from a thrift shop, but theirs, they sold for £300,000, just sitting there doing nothing. And then my favorite one's actually from the States. My favorite one's, there was a guy in California, I don't know if you read about this, but it was a guy who was a down and out, sleeping rough with his cat. And he was wrapped up in a blanket a little bit like this, until a passerby sort of noticed there was something funny about this blanket. And it turned out to be a Navajo relic, and he sold it at auction for $1.5 million, and completely turned his life around. So what I like about all these sort of stories is that we sort of have a bit of a laugh, because you think, oh, well, that's funny, these silly people didn't realize how valuable these assets are. They didn't realize how precious these things that were sitting right under their noses. But what you'll find in business is that so many businesses are doing far sillier things. Like, a lot of businesses sit on assets that are worth not just tens of thousands of pounds, but tens or even hundreds of millions of pounds. And a lot of the time, our job as marketing people or whatever part of the sort of industry you turn out to work in is to sort of help organizations just realize and appreciate the amazing things that are sitting right under their noses that you just need to sort of look at in fresh light. So it might be something like, could be something like a brand's heritage. Like, a lot of brands don't want to talk about their past because they worry that'll make them look old-fashioned. But actually, a lot of the time, working out what made a brand really successful back in their heyday is a really good way to figure out what they should be doing in the future. It doesn't mean that you literally do something old-fashioned, but it can just sort of help you, figure out, why did these guys set this company up in the first place? Or it can be a provenance, the place that the brand comes from. So a lot of companies don't really want to make a big deal of the place that they come from, because it's a bit like our hometowns. None of us really think our hometown is special, probably because it's just the place that we grew up. And sometimes it takes someone from out of town to come and say, wow, this place is amazing. What a great place to grow up. And we go, what? It's like boring and not interesting. Nobody's going to be interested in this. And brands sometimes worry that if we talk about the place we're from, we're going to alienate everyone else that isn't from this place. But no, sometimes we need to tell them, you need to tell everyone about this, because this is like a cool, interesting place that even if we're not from there, it's still going to, appeal to us. Or it can be data. A lot of brands sit on huge piles of data. They gather enormous amounts of data that's like a gold mine, and they just don't do anything with it. And the list goes on. It can be, they can have their own media, so you've got paid media, like this kind of stuff that I do for a living, advertising, but also you've got what's called owned media. So you have things like packaging, a carton. I don't know if you know the Oatly packaging, which I guess is in the States, where you've got very bold, they use their packaging almost like a billboard, really. It's like advertising space. And if you've got a package, if you've got a shop window in a store, that's like a billboard as well, isn't it? That's prime real estate. But a lot of companies don't think of it that way. They just think it's our windows or the carton for our milk or whatever. So all of these things are like amazing assets that sometimes an outsider just needs to tell a company to make more of. And I've got an example. It's that we work with a little retailer from Seattle. That you might know this little retailer from Seattle, these guys, and we all know this logo, right? And when they spell out in the name, it goes from A to Z, because we sell everything from A to Z and we deliver everything from A to Z. That's why it was devised. It's called the Amazon arrow, and that's great because they've got a reputation for being functional and they're reliable and they do deliver everything from A to Z. Great. But their task that we've been working with them over the last few years is that people, that people don't necessarily always love them or have a good emotional relationship with them, because it's just quite a functional thing. They do what they're, it's reliable, it's rational. And so our brief was, how do you make people feel something about Amazon? And as we were sitting thinking about this, one of the people in the team said, hey, you know that arrow, it doesn't necessarily have to be an arrow. That could be if you look at it another way, that could be a smile. And once you've looked at it and seen this as a smile, you can sort of only see it as a smile. Now I can't unsee it as a smile. It's sort of, and once the box is smiling, it can sing as well. And so we've done a campaign all over the world, including in the States, where the boxes are being delivered all over the world, singing and smiling. And it's, a 5-year campaign that is run all over the globe. And how much is that worth to a company like Amazon? But it's dancers sitting right in front of them. In fact, it's going past them millions of times a year on conveyor belts all over the world. But sometimes it takes you to look at what you've already got and just appreciate it through a different lens. And I think that's one of the things it's a good thing to be doing as a student, but a good thing in your career to just look at things with fresh eyes that are right under your nose. And so this first section, really, I always like to quote another very important marketing textbook that I'm sure you're all reading, which is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the granddads, when they're in that bed together, one of them says, do you know what? We're all a great deal luckier than we realize. And I think that's quite a good attitude to take to a brief, because very often there's something that we're so familiar with and we walk past in the corridor every day that we just need to look at in a new light and say, hey, hold on, maybe we should do more with that. And that's often the answer. And it's too obvious almost for anyone else to have thought of. So that first section is all about that. All clear so far? The second thing is looking out for opportunities everywhere. Now, there's a psychologist in the UK called Richard Wiseman, Professor Richard Wiseman, and he does this really interesting experiment. He asks people, do you consider yourself mostly lucky or unlucky? And then he gets people, whether they're lucky or unlucky, he gets them to read a newspaper, and he asks them to count how many photographs there are in the newspaper. And what is amazing is that the people who say they're lucky do it in a couple of seconds, and the people who are unlucky take quite a few minutes. And it's kind of an odd thing, like, and why would that happen? Well, I'll tell you why, just because on page 2, he puts a little notice in the newspaper that says, hey, you can stop counting. There's 46 photographs in this newspaper. Just tell the guy on the door and you can take your money and you can go home. And what he sort of says because of that is that the lucky people, when we say we're lucky, a lot of the time all that really means is we're good at spotting opportunities and shortcuts around us in our peripheral vision that are not literally about the thing that we've been given to concentrate on. Whereas if we say that we're unlucky, sometimes those opportunities are around us everywhere. They're staring us in the face, but we're sort of heads down and we're concentrating on the thing that we've been asked to do, like counting photographs, and we don't spot them. And he trains individuals to kind of get better at spotting those opportunities. But I think the same applies to organizations, because if you think about it, a lot of organizations right now and a lot of human beings, we're all sort of quite heads down at the moment because, times are tough, business is hard. There's a tendency for us to really just think about, if we work in the automotive business, to just think about the automotive business or whatever. Whereas actually there might be amazing stuff going on all around us in culture that could make us better in our jobs. And so in my experience, I've found that a lot of the best ideas are from like all sorts of places. It's the classic example of you go for a walk in the park and something in nature inspires you. Or you go to a ball game and something, the sport inspires you, or you start talking about philosophy or religion or politics, or you read a book about science and you just think, oh, that's kind of an interesting analogy. Or music is often a great source, or going into an art gallery. All these things, they're not literally on your course, they're not on your syllabus, and they're not things that you will be told in your job, you must do these things. But by doing them and making sure your life is rich and full and got all these other stuff going on in them, you will 100% improve your chances of striking it lucky if you work in a creative industry. And I think we can learn a few lessons from, because people sometimes say, well, that's not a very scientific way to work. But actually, that is exactly how scientists work. Scientists have got all sorts of things going around them. So a lot of scientific discoveries are made by luck and by, what's called serendipity, when they stumble on something. So there's like one of the most famous examples, and I'm not just saying this because the guy was Scottish, although that is a good reference point, is Alexander Fleming. Is a guy who discovered penicillin. This might not be a big story in the States, but everyone knows that over here. So he's doing some research over here in his lab, and then out the corner of his eye, he sort of saw by the windowsill over here, a Petri dish that had been covered in mold. Do you know this story? And it was basically, he'd left it for a couple of weeks and had developed this mold, which he then sort of figured out, that must be something I can use to create antibiotics and create penicillin. And what's interesting is he wasn't looking for that. That wasn't part of the brief. He just stumbled on it, and then he cleverly applied it. Like, I would have thrown it away in the bin, by the way, in the garbage. But luckily he was smarter than that. And what I find interesting about that is in business, or in especially in advertising and stuff like that, we look down on that sort of thinking because we say, well, he just found it by accident. He was just lucky. He stumbled on it. He wasn't working to that brief. Whereas, in science, they don't say, well, Alexander Fleming was a bit lucky. He wasn't really even looking for it. He just discovered it by chance. And, he's an idiot. No, they appreciate that there was you still have to work backwards. You make the discovery, and then you work backwards. And so I think a lot of the time, yes, we work to formal briefs and we work through the business problem and all the rest of it, but sometimes you just stumble on something when you're doing something else. You're in the shower, or you're chatting to a friend in a bar. And then, yes, you have to work backwards to make sure it all makes sense. But luck is great. Luck, we shouldn't look down on luck and say it's a bad way to discover ideas. And actually, one of the ways that you can most improve the diversity of all your ideas, obviously, is to have a diverse team. To be, you can surround your own life with lots of exotic, interesting stimuli, but you can also just work with better, more diverse bunch of people. So I've got I want to get you to do a little experiment for me here. This could go horribly wrong now, but I want you to draw something for me, if you can manage that. So I'd love it if you could imagine a planet far away that's very different from our own planet. And I'd love it if could you draw me an alien? So imagine this planet far away with a little alien living on it. What would this alien look like? I'm expecting big things here.
Well, it's only going to be me and myself showing you a photo.
That's why I need
Megan
you to
and
really.
Lauren are incognito. So
I'm needing big stuff, Lauren, Megan. I feel like if you can, I'm hoping that there's some amazing. I hope you've been drawing from the beginning of this thing, just getting prepared. It's going to be like a fully formed work of art, oil painting, pastels, sculpture, all acceptable. Doesn't matter. It's fine.
My picture, I can't even show you my picture.
Let's have a look. Let's have a look.
See it?
I can see it. Yeah, that's fine. That's good. Let's have a little look. Can you hold on?
Look, I have no idea what an alien
That's amazing.
looks like. I did a lame.
How about you, Mia? Have you finished yours yet? You're the brave one.
Mia's working on hers, I could tell.
You're just putting the finishing touches. Is anyone else?
There she is. Look, that looks like a good alien. She out alien me. That's a very good alien. It's an octopus alien.
You've saved the day, because that is exactly what you're supposed to do in this experiment. And if you hadn't done that, this bit wouldn't work. So amazing.
Terrible. I messed it up.
Well, it's
way to go, Mia.
You saved the day, because they've done this experiment. There's a university called Texas A&M University.
Texas A&M, and yep.
Yeah. And they have done this hundreds of times, I think, all over the world. And they find that everybody does what you've just done. So everybody, or like 95% of people, include some sort of sensory organs like eyes or mouth or ears or antennae or stuff like that. So that's like 95%. And 93% have limbs of some sort, like arms or legs or tentacles and that sort of thing. And then about 90% of people have lateral symmetry, so pretty much the equally symmetrical. So you did that. You scored all the points. Amazing.
Yeah.
And, slam dunk there. for
Good,
this
good school
experiment.
here. You got good students, I told you.
Exactly. And what they said was, I thought this was really interesting. They sort of found that the human brain is not good at coming up with original ideas completely from scratch. So everybody does what you've just done there. And so what we do is we sort of rely on our experience, like what we know about things, what we've experienced in our own lives. And in this experiment, it's sort of a bit of a trick because we've all grown up on the same planet, and unless there's something really weird going on, unless the WCU's got really broad reach to the outer reaches of the solar system. So we've all grown up on the same planet. We've all experienced the same sort of cultural understanding of aliens, because that is whatever culture you're in. We all, whether in Japan or whatever part of the world, we all watch the same sort of movies, sci-fi movies. So everybody draws these very similar aliens, and their sort of serious point that they then make out of that is, that's what happens when you recruit people with the same experience. They're all going to come up with the same idea in an organization. So obviously we're all rightly mindful of diversity right now as a sort of as an ethical thing. We must and should have diverse teams because it's just the right thing to do, but it's also just like business sense. Like, why would you limit yourself, and why wouldn't you want to have lots of different interesting sort of ideas? So it's basically making you much more lucky. So that whole section is looking out for opportunities everywhere. So making your own life diverse and rich and interesting, eclectic, and making sure you work with people who are from all sorts of different backgrounds. They just massively increase your chances of striking it lucky, and they make it not just an accident that you don't just stumble over things. You deliberately, gaming the system to make yourself more lucky. So, so then the third bit is, do you know? More pressure for you two. Do you know who?
More pressure? Oh no.
Do you know who this character is? This little fella.
Looks like Mickey Mouse years ago.
It's a bit like Mickey Mouse. It's actually a rabbit. It's a rabbit called Oswald. It's actually called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. That's why I discovered this little critter, Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. And anyway, but you're right. He sort of was a Walt Disney thing. It was his first big hit in 1928. He made a load of money making this film called Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, and it was a big success. And he went to New York to sign a deal with Universal to make another 25 movies, and he was going to coin it in. He was going to make a load of money. But over the course of a couple of disastrous meetings, his business partner swindled him effectively out of the rights to this property, to this idea, and took all his best people. So Walt Disney was left with nothing. So he came home to LA, was absolutely despondent, about to give up, because he'd already been made bankrupt once by this process. And but it was a very long train journey, obviously, because it's from New York to LA. So he's sitting on the train, like you would if you were Walt Disney. So he's looking out the window and he's doodling, because he's Walt Disney, isn't he? So he's drawing away, sketch. And by the time he gets out in LA the next day, he's come up with this. Probably a lot better drawn than that. Otherwise, he might not have made as much money if he drew it as badly as me. But he came up with Mickey Mouse is the point. So, and what he would then later look back and say, he said, you know what the luckiest thing about Oswald the Lucky Rabbit is? It's that he never happened. He was stolen from me, and that I would never have come up with Mickey Mouse otherwise. And this rabbit, by the way, died a death after that. Nobody cared about him. And so what I like about that story is, like, we work in a business, or you will be working in a business where ideas get killed all the time. I mean, not to be so depressing about it, but things don't work. Research blows ideas out. Clients change their mind. Budgets get cut. Timings change. Global pandemics happen that you weren't expecting. And what you have to do a lot of the time is be very resilient and pick yourself up, and not just try and do something that's kind of half as good and half-hearted, but do something that's miles better than the thing that you were really excited about in the first place. And what I've noticed is that the very best companies don't just sort of deal with bad luck; they almost run towards the bad luck, because they can see that there's opportunity in this bad luck, that there's good stuff that they can make out of it. So Steve Jobs was a famous one. He used to deliberately try to kill his own products, because he figured that, well, if I don't kill them, somebody else will. So he used to deliberately pursue his own products to try and kill them. People like, well, what about, there's a lot of famous advertising campaigns are built on what looks like a negative thing. Like if you remember, I mean, this is from way before any of our time, but it's a famous example, like Avis, and there was a campaign that was about try hard. It's one of the most famous campaigns of all time. But it was taking the point that they were second in the market, which is, you'd think is a bad thing. But no, they said, because we're second in the market, that means we try harder. So they did like a judo flip on this thing that sounded bad. Or VW, think small. So we make small cars. That's a bad thing in the States. But they turned that into a good thing because of all the great things that a small car could do. And you find a lot of great campaigns because people, individuals, we like, this is called the Pratfall Effect. We like people or brands who show a bit of weakness. You know, nobody likes someone who's so perfect that, you know, we hate people like that, don't we? We like people who are pretty good, but if they show a little bit of imperfection or flaw, then that makes us warm towards them. You know, so one of the things we did in our Amazon Super Bowl actually was we made Alexa lose her voice, and that was a nice way to. Nobody wants to hear Amazon talk about how wonderful they are, so we made her lose her voice. This year we did silly things, you know, with you know, sort of famous actors who and sort of making fun of ourselves. Really, a couple of years ago we showed all the ridiculous things that products that Amazon had tried to make, you know, voice-enabled dog collars and stuff like that, you know, stupid ideas. So you got to be able to laugh at yourself, I think, sometimes. So anyway, things like, bad stuff is a good source of energy. It can be a flaw, like that, a product flaw. It could be a taboo. You know, there's some great advertising. I don't know if you get it in the States. It's by a brand called Bodyform or Libresse. So it's you know, sanitary products, but that make that, you know, don't just avoid the subject of menstruation or women's bodies like a lot of other brands in that category. Like they run towards it and make a big deal of it and literally sing about it and do lots of beautiful, amazing, noisy, joyful advertising that it's just the opposite of what every other brand has done for the last 50 years in that category. So like a taboo can be a great thing. It sounds like a bad thing, but it's a great thing. Or a low budget, that can, like sometimes when you've got no money and you're moaning about it, actually that turns out to be a really good thing because it forces you to do something creative. And there's you know, some people would even say if you get stuck, what you should do is half the budget, which sounds counterintuitive. You might kind of think, well, I should double the budget, surely. No, you should half it because that will force you to do something that you wouldn't have considered otherwise. So I quite like that mentality. Sometimes it's good to impose a limit on yourself. Or timing as well. Sometimes when you've got no time, that sounds like a bad thing. We all moan about deadlines, but I bet as students you will know that sometimes you need a deadline to get something done, and a deadline can be the thing that forces you to do something more creative. So there's lots of things like that, even things like customer complaints and hate, you know, hate comments. You can turn hate comments into good things. You can flip them on the head. So yeah, I think just being very aware of, you know, that old expression that you know, blessings can come in disguise, can't they? And sometimes something that looks like a terrible thing can turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to you. So be on the watch out for them, for you and for your brand. And then the last bit is about practicing being lucky. And I figure that here I like to talk about music. So I don't know if you're into music at all or playing instruments, but I feel like obviously to get good at a musical instrument, you've got to practice it to some degree. But it's not just all about hard work, you know, and this idea that, you know, there's an old expression, the harder you work, the luckier you get. You know, there's no such thing as luck, is what that kind of says. But I think there is, because actually with a musical instrument, if you over practice, that's a bad thing, and you become a bit stale and you actually get worse, you know, after a certain point. And what the best musicians do, of course they practice and of course they work hard, but then there comes a point where they've got to just allow themselves to improvise and do stuff that wasn't in the plan, that's not written down in the notes. And there's a great record producer called Quincy Jones. I love this attitude. Like Quincy Jones is like the biggest record producer of all time, and he's very hardworking, but then he says, I always ring fence 20% of the time for crazy shit to happen, just things that I wasn't expecting. And on his wall, he said, he's got this great sign that says, let the Lord walk through the room. In other words, just allow, if things happen, don't get all uptight about if it's not the thing you expected, because if it's better, then that's cool. If somebody's walking past the corridor, past the recording studio, yeah, why not ask them in and see if they can jam and put a track down, and it might work, and who knows, sort of thing. So I think embracing luck and welcoming it and building it into your system. Another great musician was so David Bowie used to sort of take a newspaper and write lyrics by cutting the newspaper up, throwing all the bits in the air. And then when the words landed, they create unusual patterns. This can also be a good way to write essays, by the way, it's my top tip, because it might just get you started and you see an unusual combination of, you're going to get some really random essays now, Tom. So, but it's good because, with David Bowie, one of the things that landed was the word diamonds and the word dogs. And he thought, diamond dogs, that's a cool thing. I've never heard of that before. And that was one of his albums, Diamond Dogs, just by pure randomness. Or Tom Waits is another great American musician who he switches on 2 radios at the same time and listens to different stations at the same time, and then he works out, that's a cool combination of genres. They don't go together. Hip hop and jazz, or it's an interesting lyric. Those lyrics and those lyrics from 2 totally different songs. That's a cool collision. So I like that sort of thing. And my favorite is the best selling or the most covered song of all time in musical history. I don't know if you know what it is. It's a Beatles song, and it is Yesterday by the Beatles. It's been covered 7 million times, amazingly. One of the people that covered it was Daffy Duck. So I think if you count Daffy Duck, you can put 7 million pretty easily. Anyway, point about this is that Paul McCartney dreamt this song. So he woke up in the morning and had this amazing song going through his head, and he was sort of looking around for something to try and remember. How am I going to remember this song? And as he looked around, the only thing he could see, he was on tour, was somebody on the tour bus having breakfast. So he started making up the worst lyrics in musical history, in an act of desperation. So he started looking around going, oh God, scrambled eggs. Oh, my baby, how I love your legs, but not as much as scrambled eggs. So terrible, terrible, terrible lyrics. And the rest of the Beatles hated them for many months afterwards. He would play this scrambled egg song. But eventually he went back to fix it. A bit like, Alexander Fleming made his discovery and then he had to go back and do all the research. So sometimes you just need a breakthrough to get you started. And then you can go and do the hard work and the rigor and make it all work out. And I think that's a good lesson for all of us. Sometimes we just need to start that essay or to start that campaign or get the creative process going, and then you can figure out the rest once you're gone. And I thought I might finish. I don't know if it's going to work in a second now, but I'm going to finish by trying to prove that you can come up with good creative ideas on anything just by using random stuff. And I'm going to use the lyrics to Yesterday by the Beatles. And I need a category of products. I'd love it if you could suggest a product category I could do this for. Like, it can be anything, any type of things that you could buy or that you could advertise.
Just one product category, or
yes,
more
one
than one?
product category is
all right,
good.
Mia, what product category? You pick it. You want to put it in the chat?
Oh, you're on mute, I think.
You're on mute. There you go.
I don't know, lawn care items.
Lawn care items. Oh my goodness, what, like sort of putting on your on your grass on lawns and sort of seeds and stuff like lawn care.
Lawn mowers and grass seed.
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah.
Okay. All right, okay, bro. Okay, right. So just imagine I have somehow forgotten that I've got a lawnmower client coming in 10 minutes, and it's a disaster because I've forgotten all about it. I need a load of ideas. And all I've got is this. Well, I can start saying, I can sing to myself, yesterday. All right, that's easy because that's your brand heritage strategy. So how long has this lawnmower company been going? And is there an interesting backstory we can talk about? That's one strategy. All my troubles seem so far away. All right, far away. Does this brand come from far away? Does that make an interesting provenance story I can tell about it? Now it looks as if they're here to stay. All right, is it here to stay? Do these lawnmowers last longer? Are they here to stay for longer? Is there durability? They last for 10 years, or does the grass stay short for longer? I don't know. That's one verse. Oh, I believe in yesterday. That's your brand manifesto. A lot of advertising these days tells you about what they believe in as a brand. So what is this lawnmower? What's the bigger, higher order thought? Maybe not world peace, but lovely nature that this brand stands for. Okay, that's 4 strategies. Suddenly, okay, maybe this is a brand that's, you know, maybe gardening is boring because it's a chore, because it's something you only do at weekend, but maybe this is a brand that believes in spontaneously doing stuff in your garden that make it a bit more fun. I'm not half the man I used to be. Yeah, well, maybe there's a sort of a masculinity thing that we could sort of do men do most of the gardening. I don't know. Or is it about men not being the people they used to be and changing roles of people within the family, and it's for everybody? Or is it just about change general, like a change strategy? This is the lawnmower brand for the new generation sort of thing, the old Pepsi strategy. There's a shadow hanging over me. Maybe there's a shadow, maybe there's like a problem though. Like we said, if you've got a problem in a category or a thing that people are annoyed or frustrated by, maybe you should run towards it and embrace it and make something of it. Why she had to go, I don't know. She wouldn't say, I don't know. Like, that's great, because that's like a lack of awareness. Now that's kind of a, maybe people just don't know anything about this brand. It's like you do a brand awareness campaign, or they don't know something about it that you could sort of inform them about. I said something wrong. Yes, and that is a myth that, or a sort of a taboo that we could bust about this company, saying wrong stuff, but we could correct them. Now, I long for yesterday. Longing is your old, that's your got milk strategy, isn't it? You know, the idea that you, I mean, they've been running that for years in the States, right? Where they take the milk away and then they make you long for it, you desire it. Well, maybe we don't appreciate our lawnmowers either, do we, until we don't have them, and then all hell breaks loose, and this is going to get you longing for that lawn care brand. Last verse, you'll be glad to know. Yesterday, love was such an easy game to play. Love is one strategy, so that's 3 strategies. Love, because we love this brand. Easy, because it's easy to use. It might be the most convenient brand. Or a game to play, maybe it's, again, more playful, not as serious as some of those other garden brands. Now I need a place to hide away. Yeah, that's your garden, isn't it? That is like maybe positioning the garden as some amazing place, an oasis of solitude and tranquility that is enabled by this fantastic lawnmower brand. And then the final line, the line that must have taken Paul McCartney months to write, to prepare for this, which is obviously the satisfaction strategy is just, this is so goddamn satisfying to use this lawnmower brand. It's going to make you feel great. It's that I'm loving it strategy. And okay, I'm being an idiot here, I'm being a moron, but out of those sort of 15 or 16 strategies that we just created in the space of a couple of minutes, probably maybe 2 or 3 of them are all right, and or at least might get you thinking about other different directions that you could take this lawnmower brand in. And like Paul McCartney and the eggs, or like Alexander Fleming and the Petri dish, we can go back afterwards now and sort of work out the science of which ones are stupid and which ones actually do work. But we've got, at least we've got 15 things to choose from. And my point is that by embracing luck and by seeing luck as a good thing, we maximize our chances of business success. We make it a much more fun process too. It doesn't have to be all about hard work. And I sort of think, especially at the moment when we could all do with a little bit of luck in our lives, that's not the worst thing if we can be more successful and have a bit more fun. So I hope that will apply to you. And either way, go luck yourselves.
That was awesome. First of all, Andy is going to try to get us a deal on the book, so everybody can get it at a discounted price. I can't recommend it any higher than you got to read that book. It is just, it was so much fun. I couldn't put it down, start to finish, loved it. And I learned a lot about branding and you know, becoming a better marketer. So thank you, Andy, for sharing that. Again, you gave us a keynote speech for 10,000 people, and it was me and Mia who showed ourselves, and it was Lauren and Megan. I know Lauren was there. She spoke in the chat box. Thank you so much. And like I say, we're going to get word out. We'll get a price discount so you can buy the book, read it, and become a better marketer. Andy, thanks for doing this on a late night back home. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you turning up, and it was fun to do anyway. So cheers, good luck with your studies and careers and all the rest of it. And yeah, have fun.
That was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.